Storytime with Grena. Hello everybody and welcome to Storytime with Grena. I'm Grena Lawson, and just like every Friday, or whenever you are listening to this, I'm here to brighten up your day with a new crazy story. In the next 7 minutes, I will tell you something that may or may not have happened, and you will decide if it is real or if I'm making it up completely. But before we dive into the new story, let's talk about last week's. If you remember, I told you about that one time when I accidentally skipped a class when I was around 15. So, was that story real or fake? And the answer is... that story was real. Yes, everything about it was real. From me being a good student and a very responsible kid, to my mother saying that it was such a pathetic excuse that it had to be true. And now, let's talk about something else. Today, I bring you the story of Nina. She was the first friend, or one of the first friends I made in college, but she also turned out to be one of the craziest or weirdest people I have ever met. As you might have guessed, we met in class. We were both studying modern foreign languages, so of course in our degree communication was very important. That meant we had to do a lot of exercises in pairs, presentations, group projects. You can imagine. And I noticed Nina from the very beginning because she was a goth, and I had never met a goth. I knew they existed thanks to TV or the internet, but I grew up in a very small town. So meeting alternative people was very rare, and also it was impossible to find that style of clothing. So you could say back then I was kind of like a closeted goth. Well, I was a closeted something else, but that's irrelevant to this story. So basically, she was the first goth I ever met, and I was fascinated. She had really long hair, black of course. She dressed always in black, with lots of skirts, lots of lace, lots of velvet, sometimes a little bit of leather or chains, these really thick-soled boots. I really liked her style. So when one of our teachers told us to sit in pairs and do some activity, I don't even remember what it was, I deliberately sat next to her so I could, apart from doing the activity, so I could introduce myself and get to know her. You know how goths and metalheads have this reputation for being scary, being very serious or unfriendly and all of that? Well, she wasn't. She was actually quite sweet and fun. In fact, we had a lot of things in common. Apart from, obviously, languages, she also really liked writing. She was really into fantasy, a bit of a nerd. We had a very similar musical taste, and apart from that, she loved singing and playing guitar. So that was perfect for me, and we seemed to click from the beginning, so I introduced her to my other friends and I invited her to a few of our dorm parties. Slowly she became part of my main friend group, and we started hanging out a lot, like basically every weekend and sometimes during the week as well. And we got pretty close. And that's when I started noticing that some things were a little bit off about her. See, apart from all the things I mentioned before, another thing we seemed to have in common was a certain curiosity for the occult. And by the occult, I mean things like, astrology, anything remotely close to witches, vampires, werewolves, ghosts, aliens. First time I mentioned being interested in that kind of stuff, she went all somber and said, "Oh, that's just because you haven't grown up surrounded by it." Then she explained that her parents were really enthusiastic about this sort of alternative religions, so apparently she had developed certain skills from a very young age, like reading auras, controlling pain, predicting things, and seeing ghosts. I've always been a little bit on the fence about this kind of stuff. Like, I've always been interested in the occult, but I've never taken it too seriously. I've always been a little bit skeptic, but curious at the same time. So I simply asked some questions, wanting to know more about it, and that was my mistake. Her story started getting progressively weirder, as in, at first it was only, yeah, I can see ghosts sometimes, but then it became, oh, my family home is like a cafe for spirits, and many of them sometimes come to talk to me. Then we went from that to, yeah, a spirit once tried to have his way with me, if you know what I mean. And okay, that is all harmless until you start using it for manipulation, until the whole, yeah, I have great intuition and I can sometimes predict things, or I can read auras, to, ooh, don't talk to this person because I can see darkness in them. And well, when everything reached its peak was when she told the whole friend group that while she was walking by one of the local churches, she had had a vision about vampires living there, and that she had come to the conclusion that she wasn't completely human, that apparently she was a fallen angel, but she had been kicked out of heaven for consorting with vampires. And this was what led me to say, okay, I've had enough. Bye. I mean, for all I know, she could have ended up recruiting me for some weird angel-worshipping cult. Now that you know the story of Nina the fallen angel, what do you think? Do people like her exist in real life? Or is she just a character of one of those fantasy stories I like writing? Anyway, you will find out in the next episode of Storytime with Grena. See you next week!